You're watching Story Scroll. Real stories, raw emotions, and endings you'll never forget. Let's scroll into today's tale.
My siblings slowly ruined my life, and I didn't realize it until everything collapsed. I'm 27 now. My sibling is 24, 2 years younger than me, and from the outside, we always looked like a typical close-knit pair. But growing up, I was always the responsible one, the quiet achiever, the one who tried to keep peace in the house. My sibling, on the other hand, was the golden child. Charming, funny, and effortlessly persuasive, they could do no wrong in the eyes of everyone else. Parents, teachers, friends. My parents, at first subtly, and then increasingly obviously, played favorites. I'd stay up late finishing assignments, and my sibling would casually get A's without trying. Teachers loved them. Relatives fawned over them. And every time I complained or pointed out unfairness, I was told, "You're too sensitive," or "That's just how they are." I started internalizing it, thinking I must be overreacting. Even so, I tried to be the bigger person. I believed family was about loyalty, about rising above pettiness. I never suspected that my sibling could be deliberately undermining me. The first warning signs were subtle. Little things that at the time I brushed off. They'd take credit for things I'd done. A school project, a presentation, even an idea for a family event. I'd hear adults praising them for something I had spent weeks on. They told jokes at my expense, stories that made me look bad, exaggerated in front of others, framed as harmless teasing. They'd belittle my accomplishments subtly. "Oh, that's cute, but you really could have done better." Always under the guise of advice. Whenever I tried to bring it up, my parents dismissed it. "You're reading too much into it," or "Don't take it personally." I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe my sibling loved me. It wasn't until college that I started noticing a pattern I couldn't ignore. I had been doing well academically, landing internships, building connections. But somehow, opportunities kept slipping through my fingers. Jobs I was perfect for went to other people. Professors would hint I was unreliable, even though I'd never missed a deadline. I couldn't understand it until I pieced it together later. My sibling had applied for some of the same positions I was aiming for. Not only that, they spoke to my professors and coworkers about me, carefully framing me as unstable, selfish, or dishonest. I lost out on at least 3 internships I'd been counting on because of this. I remember the gut punch of thinking I'd done something wrong, never imagining that my own sibling was orchestrating it. It didn't stop with school or work. My friends started drifting away. One by one, people I trusted suddenly acted distant, cold, or hostile. My partner at the time, someone I truly loved, started doubting me over minor disagreements. It took a long time to figure out why. Eventually, I learned that my sibling had been in contact with these people, checking in under the guise of concern, planting seeds of doubt about me. I had been framed as toxic, jealous, and unreliable by the one person I thought I could trust above all others. By my mid-20s, I was living independently, but shared a lease with my sibling when I moved closer to work. I trusted them completely. Big mistake. They repeatedly missed rent and utility payments. They lied to the landlord, claiming I was the one who refused to pay. They borrowed money and didn't repay it, sometimes blaming me when I confronted them. I got calls threatening eviction. My credit took a hit. Friends I had relied on for support were pulled into the drama. It was humiliating. I couldn't understand why my life was unraveling in what seemed like every area: work, friendships, relationships, finances, until I started connecting the dots. The final blow came in waves. I lost a promotion I'd worked for months to secure, only to find out my sibling had gone behind my back and convinced my boss I was not a team player. My partner broke up with me shortly after, claiming they had lost trust in me. Later, I learned my sibling had fed them a story about me being manipulative and self-centered. I got evicted because my sibling missed another rent payment and then blamed me. It all collapsed in what felt like a single week. That's when I realized every major setback I'd endured had at least some involvement from my sibling. Everything from career disappointments to personal betrayals to financial ruin had been influenced, orchestrated, or outright caused by them. I've replayed these moments 1,000 times, trying to understand my own role. But the pattern is undeniable. I was being set up, manipulated, and gaslit, all by the person who should have been my ally in life. And now I ask myself, constantly, am I crazy for thinking my sibling destroyed my life?
I don't have all the answers yet.
I'm still picking up the pieces. But writing this here is the first step in admitting what I've been too afraid to say aloud for years, that the person I trusted most in my family might be the one who has actively tried to ruin me. Update. A few weeks after my last post, I decided I couldn't stay in limbo anymore. I needed answers. I needed honesty. And most importantly, I needed to know once and for all if my sibling had actually been sabotaging my life or if I was spiraling into paranoia. I planned a calm, private conversation. No accusations, no yelling, just a clear, direct talk. I said, I've noticed patterns in how my friends, work, and relationships have gone wrong. I need to know if you've been involved in this. The response I got shook me in ways I didn't expect. My sibling froze for a moment, and then, like clockwork, the performance started. First came gaslighting. What are you even talking about? I've done nothing wrong. You're imagining things as usual. Then came tears, dramatic, public school play-level tears. And finally, the victim act. I can't believe you think I would do that to you. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I stayed calm, repeating my questions. But as expected, my parents stepped in before I could get a single straight answer. Don't accuse your sibling like that, they said. You're tearing the family apart. My sibling smiled innocently, the golden child again. And I realized nothing would be resolved here till I started digging quietly. At first, it was small. A friend reached out to me, embarrassed. I didn't know you'd be upset, but your sibling warned me you were manipulative, they said. My heart sank. Then an ex reached out, saying almost the same thing. Screenshots, emails, even voicemails started surfacing. Every conversation revealed subtle lies, careful planting of doubt, and outright sabotage. It hit me like a truck. All the little betrayals I had chalked up to coincidence or bad luck were deliberate. My sibling had been constructing a version of me that didn't exist, a version they could control, isolate, and dismantle. I tried showing the evidence to my parents, hoping that seeing the receipts would open their eyes. Instead, they minimized it. You're making this bigger than it is, they said. You always blow things out of proportion. My siblings saw the hesitation and escalated. Social media posts, vague, concerned messages to mutual friends, subtweets, they were subtle enough that everyone who didn't know the full story bought it. I felt trapped. The very people I thought I could rely on now seemed to be choosing sides against me. Every call, every text, every social interaction felt like walking through a minefield, and I won't lie, this period broke me. Anxiety, insomnia, constant self-doubt. I couldn't eat properly, couldn't focus at work, couldn't trust anyone. I spent nights journaling, therapy sessions, anything to process the feeling of having my life manipulated right under my nose. It was in those long, sleepless nights that I had a critical realization. This wasn't sibling rivalry. This wasn't typical family drama. This was calculated sabotage. All the patterns, all the coincidences, all the doors that kept closing, they were never coincidences at all. My sibling had orchestrated them. For the first time in my life, I started setting firm boundaries. I went low contact. I stopped trying to explain myself. I stopped defending my character to anyone who wasn't willing to look at the proof. First, it felt cruel.
Guilty. Wrong.
But slowly, I started feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Relief that I wasn't constantly bending over backward to appease someone who never had my best interests at heart. Relief that I could finally focus on myself without the constant manipulation undermining me. It hasn't been easy. There's still guilt. There's still the voice in my head that questions if I overreacted. But the receipts, the evidence, the long pattern of betrayal, they leave no room for doubt. Final update. After weeks of sleepless nights, constant anxiety, and endless second-guessing, I finally reached a point where I could no longer live under the shadow of my siblings' manipulation. I knew what had to happen. I needed to cut them off, fully, and reclaim my life. The turning point came unexpectedly. A mutual friend of ours, someone who had been quietly observing the pattern, confronted my sibling in a private conversation, not realizing I would eventually hear about it. During the confrontation, my sibling slipped up. For the first time, unguarded and unfiltered, they admitted it. "I couldn't stand you being happier than me," they said, almost in a whisper, but loud enough for the truth to finally land. It was surreal. All the betrayals, all the lost opportunities, all the moments I blamed myself for, they weren't coincidences. They were deliberate acts of jealousy and sabotage. And now the truth, undeniable and raw, was finally out in the open. What happened next was almost poetic justice. My sibling, so skilled at manipulation, suddenly found themselves isolated. Friends they had leaned on for validation started pulling away, having finally recognized the lies. The job they had secured through subtle sabotage began to slip as their colleagues questioned their integrity. Even their partner began seeing cracks in the carefully constructed facade. Family dynamics shifted too. My parents, who had previously minimized my experiences, were forced to confront reality. Some admitted their mistakes, while others stubbornly doubled down, but the cracks in trust had appeared, and they couldn't ignore them anymore. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was the one with the problem. With the truth exposed, I finally had the space to breathe. I moved to a new city, started a job I had been waiting years for, and even began dating someone who respects and values me for who I am. I no longer felt the need to explain myself to anyone, especially not to the person who had spent so long tearing me down. Confidence returned slowly, but steadily. I celebrated small wins without fear of judgment, laughed without second-guessing, and finally trusted my instincts again. It was liberating to realize that the person who had once controlled so much of my life no longer had any power over me. Cutting off my sibling wasn't easy emotionally. I grieved the relationship I thought I had, the childhood memories, the shared moments, the person I had hoped they could be. But I also accepted a difficult truth. Some people share your blood, but not your love. Some relationships, no matter how close they seem, are too toxic to maintain. My sibling eventually tried to reach out, sending messages that ranged from apologetic to manipulative. I read them once, then deleted without responding. I didn't feel triumphant or bitter. I simply felt free. I no longer needed their approval, their lies, or their control. The final realization was simple but profound. They didn't ruin my life. They delayed it. Everything I had lost or been set back from eventually came back, stronger and better. And for the first time in years, I could finally move forward without fear, without guilt, and without their shadow looming over me.
Thanks for watching Story Scroll. Hit that bell and stay tuned for the next story that will move your heart.